So you're living the dream. You are a digital nomad bouncing around, or maybe you got a digital nomad visa from a European country. What does the tax scenario look like from a US perspective?
That is a loaded question. So we're going to have to talk through what's a digital nomad, what type are you? There's a lot of different types these days. And can you legally not pay any US taxes as a digital nomad? My name is Nathalie Goldstein, CEO of MyExpatTaxes, the leading US tax software for Americans abroad. So if you got to file your taxes back home, no matter where you are, MyExpatTaxes is the place to be. We will help you through that process. And I am on your wonderful channel about how to help you move abroad.
Hey guys, it's Vanessa from Wander Onwards. Welcome back to the channel. I have my favorite internet bestie with me, Nathalie, and on this channel, we focus on all things financial and location independence. So naturally, a digital nomad video was well due at this point. First, we're going to talk about defining what a digital nomad is, because there's actually two now. And then we're going to talk about the tax implications for US digital nomads when reporting taxes back home to the United States. Because as you know, we have to file no matter where we are in the world.
Unfortunately, that is true. I can verify that.
Yep. And the reason Nathalie is here is because she is the queen of US expat taxes when it comes to reporting and filing back to the United States. So thank you so much.
So sweet, so sweet. Tell me, what are the different types of digital nomads?
So we have two. One, we have the digital nomad that is living her or his or their best life abroad, bouncing from country to country, most likely on a tourist visa or a short stay visa of some sort. So their tax residency isn't necessarily abroad. They're not paying and reporting taxes to foreign countries.
So basically, you're not registered as a resident in any specific country, and you're not liable for income tax in any foreign country outside of the US, obviously, because you're a US citizen. That is
the first type.
All right.
The second type is a digital nomad who is registered as a tax resident in a foreign country. So maybe they have the Italian digital nomad visa, the Spanish non-lucrative visa, the D8 visa in Portugal, a lot of different options, which potentially has a tax responsibility in that country that you now live in. But let's go ahead and focus on the first example.
Okay, I do want to add, when we talk about digital nomad, it even goes deeper than those two types, because then you're also thinking about how you're earning money. So just keep in mind, I'm always going to reference, are you an employee, like a W-2 worker for a US company, but you can work remotely, so you're enjoying that and working from anywhere? Or are you self-employed and you're taking on freelancing gigs, you're a sole proprietor? Those are two very different types. So just keep that in mind as we go through the examples.
That's why we have her here. She has all the answers in that big, beautiful brain of hers. Let's get into the first example, which is the one I think people are most familiar with. Being a digital nomad that is just bouncing from country to country, working remotely on either a W-2 or a 1099, or is self-employed entirely.
Yeah. So let's go with that. You are a W-2 worker. You are a remote worker. You are working abroad. You're spending, couple weeks in Spain, couple weeks in the
Morocco.
UK, whatever, right? So you are a W-2 worker. You are an employee. You have wages. If you are outside the US for 330 full days in a consecutive 12-month period, I will break it down for you. Just wait. But if you qualify for that, you can use a very cool tax benefit called the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion, meaning you can exclude up to $120,000 US dollars as of tax year 2023 from US taxation. Again, what does that mean? That means if you are a W-2 worker earning up to $120,000 US dollars and you are physically abroad for 330 full days in a 12-month period, you could effectively pay no income tax because
Legally.
It's
all legal.
Legal, because you're not paying obviously any income taxes to Spain, Morocco, because you're not there long enough. And your US tax liability allows you to exclude the income you earn while physically being outside the US from US taxation. So even if you had withheld federal income taxes, you could get a refund of all of those withheld taxes. You could also ask your employer to simply not withhold federal taxes or not withhold Social Security taxes. It's a little bit riskier because maybe you end up owing, right? In the end, for one or two other reasons, whatever. However, basically, long story short, if you are an employee, especially a W-2 employee, and you have federal withheld taxes or you don't, you could legally pay no income tax because you're using the foreign earned income exclusion. Let's dive into that. How do you use the foreign earned income exclusion as a digital nomad? So the main thing is there are two different tests to use the foreign earned income exclusion, which is on Form 2555. The first is a bona fide residence. You will not qualify. You are not registered in any country. You're not subject to income tax in any country outside the US for a full tax year. Don't waste your time. Now you're looking at the physical presence test. And that means, like I have said multiple times, that you are outside the US, physically outside of the US and its territories for 330 full days in a 12-month period that can start or end in the tax year, meaning you're not restricted to being abroad between January 1st and December 31st. You could use a 12-month period that is, say, June to June, right? It just has to start or end in the tax year. I am so sure that this is very confusing. I am so sure that you're thinking, do I have to track everything on Excel spreadsheet? MyExpatTaxes will automatically look at all your travel and then figure out if you're eligible for the physical presence test or not. But not even just that. We're going to figure out what is that optimal 12-month period to be eligible, right? Because at a first glance, maybe you're thinking, hey, I took a really big trip in December. I'm not eligible. Well, guess what? We're going to try to use November to November instead. So I backtrack. A lot of information about if you are an employee as a digital nomad.
All right, so it seems pretty clear if you are a W-2 employee, but a lot of people go abroad as a 1099 because it allows more flexibility. So in that scenario, Natalie, what can a 1099 person expect to be confronted with?
Okay, a little bit harder. You will probably end up paying taxes. We'll get there. So if you're a 1099 contractor from the US, or if are freelancing for non-US companies and you're a freelancer, you're a sole proprietor, regardless if it's US or foreign self-employment income, you're going to file this income on Schedule C. You can still use the foreign earned income exclusion as I had described, assuming you're eligible, to eliminate your income tax liability. But guess what? There's self-employment tax, there's social security tax. So if you are self-employed, you have to also file Schedule SE, which is self-employment tax. And if you're obviously just kind of bopping around the world and you're not registered in any country paying into their social security system, then you automatically will always have to pay into the US system, which is 15.3% tax, self-employment tax on your net profit above $400. So it gets a lot trickier. And in this situation, there is pretty much no legal way to not pay taxes as a digital nomad. It only really works if you are an employee, not as a self-employed person in this scenario.
Can I also add, though, that if you already have contributions to Social Security in the United States that you've been making over several years, you may want to consider paying tax and continuing to pay into Social Security so you're able to hit that 40 credit requirement so you can get distributions in the future yourself.
Yeah. So just in case, you haven't been watching our videos, just to describe that is, obviously, if you want US Social Security benefits, you need to pay into the US Social Security system for a certain amount of time. The way it is working now is you need to have 40 credits accumulated before you retire. If you're paying self-employment tax, which you can do from the US or from abroad, you can accumulate up to 4 credits per year. So helping you hit that 40 credit amount by retirement, allowing you to draw from the US Social Security pot.
We have a whole video about Social Security that will be coming out shortly, so check out that video if you want to understand more about how that income will be taxed once you do hit retirement. We were just referencing the 1099 scenario, but actually we can include someone who is a sole proprietor or has an LLC. It's the same scenario, right?
You're self-employed.
Perfect. Simple, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. The second type of digital nomad is someone who is eligible and has a digital nomad visa and is now a resident of a foreign country. Now, based off of what country you go to, there may or may not be a requirement to pay taxes to that foreign country. So, in that scenario, Nathalie, how would someone organize their tax setup?
So, in this scenario, if you're registered in a country as a tax resident, a couple things open up for you. One is you can actually use the bona fide residence test on Form 2555, the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion. So now you're not limited by your US travel. You can actually travel back to the US pretty often. The main requirement is that you, as a bona fide resident, you have been registered in a foreign country as a tax resident and you are subject to income tax if there were income tax, because there are some countries that don't have income tax. But again, if you are registered and you would be subject to income tax because you're not working for the UN, you're not working for an international organization, then you can use the foreign earned income exclusion, assuming for the whole tax year, January to December or longer. You can use the foreign earned income exclusion and travel back to the US as much as you want. You don't have to use the physical presence test. Just keep in mind, obviously, if you travel back to the US and you earn money while you're in the US, any money you earn, even if from a foreign employer, a foreign client, if you earned it while being in the US, that's considered US sourced income, so you can't exclude it on the foreign earned income exclusion. Little details, right? We're going to get into it maybe in a different video, not this one. So that is what really opens up for you as a tax resident in a different country, is that you have more flexibility to use the foreign earned income exclusion. Another thing that opens up to you if you're a tax resident in a foreign country, especially if, say, Portugal or something, is if that country has a totalization treaty with the US. Not all of them do, so you have to check that information, or let us check it for you at myexpattaxes.com. Is basically if you pay and you're registered as a self-employed person and you pay into that social security system as a self-employed person, you don't have to pay self-employment tax in the US. You can exempt yourself out of it. So it can be that really you're only paying taxes to the country you're living in, and on your US tax return, you don't owe any US taxes.
So, we were just talking about all the potential ways to pay or be responsible for taxes. But as a digital nomad, where do you actually pay taxes?
So, as a digital nomad, again, it depends, as with everything to do with taxes. But I'll summarize it very shortly. If you're a digital nomad and you're not registered in the country that you're working out of, basically you're kind of moving around on tourist visas and you're not on a proper work permit, so to say, you're normally looking at paying taxes back to the US. But depending on if you can use the foreign earned income exclusion, depending if you're an employee or if you're self-employed, maybe you don't pay any tax after all. But you definitely will have to report and figure out if you have a tax liability in the US. Now, if you are a tax resident of a foreign country, it can be very well that, well, obviously you're a tax resident there. You have to report your income there. You're probably going to be paying taxes in your foreign country. However, you should not be double taxed because you can then use those income taxes paid in that foreign country on your US tax return. Yes, we have a video about how to use foreign tax credits as well. We have a lot of videos. But that's generally the answer. If you're not registered in a country as a tax resident, you can count on the US to look for that money. And if you are registered as a resident in a tax country, you can look at the US to still try to get some of it, but you should generally not be double taxed.
So, if I am a digital nomad in a low tax environment like Dubai or the United Arab Emirates,
Literally zero income tax.
perfect. So, I'm a registered resident
Yeah.
in the UAE. Tell me about this scenario. There are quite a few countries that are offering digital nomad visas that have 0% income tax. So, you could have a proper residence permit there while still having no tax responsibility. What's the tax scenario in this type of environment?
So, as I alluded to, when we're talking about the bona fide residence test, the question at hand is, are you a registered resident, a registered tax resident? So, if you are a registered resident, and if there were an income tax, you would also be liable to pay that income tax. You can use the bona fide residence test. You can. Only if you are living in a country and you are not registered as a resident, so you're on a tourist visa, you don't have a proper work permit, you don't have a proper residence permit there, Or in a situation very common in Austria where I am based, if you're working for the UN or an international organization, you are living in Austria, but you are not a tax resident. All of your income is earned from the UN, an international organization. You do not pay Austrian taxes on it. You have exempted yourself out from the Austrian tax system, from the Austrian pension system, from the Austrian social security system. You really have given a statement saying, hey, I'm not liable for income taxes here because I work for an international organization. That is when you can't use the bona fide residence test. But if you are in Dubai, in the UAE, and you are a registered resident, just because there is not an income tax doesn't mean you cannot use the bona fide residence test.
I think this is the first year that they've actually implemented an income tax of 5%.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Oh, times are changing.
Times are changing.
Everyone wants their piece of the pie.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's still very much a low tax environment, well worth you considering if that is the right environment for you.
Yeah. I will add a note there. If you are earning over the foreign earned income exclusion, and of course you can even add to that a little bit more because there's a housing exclusion, but we really figure out at MyExpatTaxes how much you can exclude with the foreign earned income exclusion, housing deduction, etc. If you are a very high earner, say you have 200K in wages from a low income tax country, expect to pay income tax to the US because you can only exclude, like I said, as of tax year 2023, the base amount of 120,000 US dollars plus a little extra from a housing deduction exclusion. I won't get into it, but a plus a little extra. Any access fully taxable from the US, and you're obviously not paying that many foreign taxes locally. So that means there's probably going to be a gap that you will pay to the US.
But they do a great job at lowering the amount of tax that is possible. I think this year was my most profitable year ever as an entrepreneur and someone who has the equivalent of a W-2 in Germany. I think I paid $38.
Yeah, and that was nothing to do with income tax or self-employment tax.
Nope.
That was another topic. Maybe me and her will cover net investment income tax, but I stopped there because I am boring you.
Never. Okay, we're going to talk about this over sushi. All right, so you've moved abroad, you're working abroad as a digital nomad. If your employer is withholding taxes, how do you get that money back?
File a tax return with MyExpatTaxes.com. It is that easy. You go into MyExpatTaxes.com, you enter in your W-2 information, you tell us that you were working abroad 100% of the time, 50% of the time, 96% of the time. We will exclude as much as we can with the foreign earned income exclusion, assuming you're eligible for it. And then you will get a refund of your withheld taxes, but you will have to file a tax return because the IRS will not know that you were withheld incorrectly.
And so if I'm a California W-2 employee living and working abroad as a digital nomad on a tourist visa, what can I claim back in my file?
All right, so we're looking at if you have withheld federal taxes, assuming you're earning under the foreign earned income exclusion, you can use it in full. So you have no taxable income on your US tax return, you will get your withheld federal taxes completely back. You cannot get your withheld Social Security taxes or Medicare taxes back on a US tax return normally, only if they're held in access, but this is very different to what we're talking about here. And then on your California tax return, if you're really a non-resident and you're really not, this gets tricky, right? Because if you are still considered domiciled in California, even if you're not living there because of the safe harbor rules, et cetera, blah, 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 technically your worldwide income is still taxable in California. But if you're really not living in California, you broke ties with it, and you had California state tax withheld, and you are a non-resident, you did not work in California at all, you could get all California state tax also refunded.
There's just so many opportunities. You really do need to work with a professional because you're doing what you're doing great and well abroad. Let them do the rest of it. Let them take over.
Yeah, and again, MyExpatTaxes.com, you can do it yourself and use our software, which is, basically going to be your virtual tax professional. Or you can say, no, I need to talk to a real tax professional, also an option. Or you say, I really need to work with a tax professional step by step, also an option. Or you say, I want to plan my move abroad, also an option. And with that being said, if you're planning your move abroad, make sure to check out her because she helps everyone figure out how to have their dream life abroad. I'm just here to help you figure out the tax situation afterwards.
That's right, guys. So we are at the end of our video. Thank you so much for being with us. As a reminder, check out my personal finance for expat playlist where I have tons of videos about Social Security and how it's taxed abroad, how to invest, how to buy a house and report that back. I've really thought through this entire end-to-end experience. If you are enjoying this content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a like on this video. It really, really helps our channel spread across the internet so more people like yourself can see this great information.
If you have a question for us, make sure to add it in the comments as well. Vanessa will just track me down and I'll make sure to help with any tax related questions.
Thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.